Welcome to another episode of the Podcast Profits Unleashed podcast, where we introduce experts who are really making waves in the industry. And today I'm thrilled to introduce Keith Ellis. He is a superpower coach. He's a best-selling author and he is the number one superpower coach in the world, in fact. And he helps successful entrepreneurs achieve impossible goals by working less. Isn't that what we all are looking for? Now, he reinvented the art of setting goals in his classic book, The Magic Lamp, goal setting for people who hate setting goals. Are you actually setting your goals? And this has helped more than 100,000 readers around the globe. Then he joined a tiny internet startup named Web Methods, and he was only their sixth employee. And as their first VP of sales, his job was to sell a product that wasn't even finished from a company that no one had ever heard of into a market that didn't exist. And then 3 years after that went public. He, in one of the largest software IPOs in history, he then wrote a book that changed everything. Magic Questions 2.0, how to transform your life at the speed of thought. And now he is just about to publish the groundbreaking work, How to Make the Impossible Easy, and the astonishing secret of 10 times your superpower, right? And this is where he reveals how entrepreneurs can achieve impossible goals. So welcome to the show, Keith.
Thank you so much, Karen. I'm delighted to be here.
So let's start with a little bit more of a backstory, right? What was the inspiration behind you even wanting to help successful entrepreneurs achieve impossible goals by working less? What was the inspiration behind it?
It's a long backstory. Years ago, my entire adult life, I've essentially been a success junkie. So I dived deeply into all sorts of people, from Socrates to Tony Robbins to Dan Sullivan, and learned a ton from these people, sometimes face-to-face, sometimes virtually, sometimes by reading their books or attending their seminars, because it fascinated me. I believe human potential is hugely underutilized. And just looking at myself, I was living proof of that. So I wanted to try to make the most of my potential. And I got to a point in my life where I realized what I really get off on is helping others develop their potential. That's how I develop my potential. And so I just started doing that. And I got to a point where I was literally in the shower one day, and I was thinking, I hate setting goals. I've studied all this stuff. I know you're supposed to set goals, but goals didn't work for me. They took all the spontaneity out of life. There was no excitement there. I didn't like it. And I was taking a shower, and I was thinking, I think I just seen Aladdin, the movie, or something like that, and with my kids. And I realized setting a goal is exactly the same as making your wish come true. If you had a genie, but the difference is you're your own genie. And I was so excited by that. It was like I was hit by lightning in the shower. Jump out of the shower. I always have a notepad and a pen anywhere I am, my bed, my shower, my car. So I jumped out. I'm writing down what became the Magic Lamp framework for how to set goals for people who hate setting goals, of which I was one. And it got me excited because it was the difference between getting up in the morning, your alarm goes off and you roll over and you say, okay, today I'm going to work on my goals. Okay, that's one thing. Or you think, today I'm going to make my wishes come true. And it was like, wow, that's night and day. That's the difference between lightning and a lightning bug. And I got really excited about it. So I wrote this book. It became very successful. It was translated into a bunch of languages, sold around the world, still being sold. I tried to buy the book back. This is 30 years ago now. Tried to buy the book back from the publisher because I wanted to start incorporating it into what I'm doing. And the publisher said, no, it's still selling too well. You can't have it.
Wow.
And it was a great problem to have, but it was just funny. It was a big publisher. Anyway, so that book, I used what I was teaching people in my own life, and I was successful. Things were great. I got to the point in my life, as we do, we progress through stages in life. I said, I can be successful, but I'm not satisfied with being successful. I want extraordinary. And I don't know how to do it. And it frustrated me because it was like, I can't take my life to the next level. I can take it to this great level, but not to the next level. And I dove back into all this success literature that I'd already consumed, went to more seminars, did all this stuff, did the research I've been doing all along. And I realized what was missing was this certain type of question that is the heart and soul of everybody's success system. They don't call it a magic question, but its impact is so profound, it's magic. So I started calling it magic questions. And then I started going back to all this stuff, and I found that everybody, whenever they're teaching you something that's really valuable, ends up giving you questions to ask that are super powerful. And so I created this framework for magic questions. I call it the magic framework for how to ask the right question in the right way at the right time. And it transforms your life at the speed of thought. So that was profound. That had an amazing effect in my life. That was great. And then I had this epiphany where I was going along, making progress in my life in all sorts of ways, but I realized it was essentially incremental progress. It was, okay, I'll get a little bit better tomorrow, and then the next day, and the next day, and the next day. At the end of the year, I'll have 100% growth or something. That's good. And then I'll keep doing that. In 10 years, I'll have 1,000% growth. But I realized that's incremental. What's beyond incremental? And what I realized was what was missing for me was that I was selling myself short. I would have we talk about the glass ceiling in society and politics and things like that. We all have a glass ceiling in our mind, in our own mind. And the glass ceiling is, okay, yeah, I can do this, but I can't really do that. That's impossible for me. And it's so deeply ingrained in us that we take it for granted and we don't even challenge it. We reach a point where, okay, that's just the way it is. And I said, what's through that glass ceiling? What if I broke that? And what I came up with was my life became more interesting and far more productive when I committed to an impossible goal. My brain suddenly said, oh, he doesn't think this is impossible anymore. Maybe we should figure out how to do this. And suddenly it wasn't impossible. It changed my life on the spot. This happened really only about a year ago. And I knew I had to write a new book that took all the stuff with the magic lamp and all the stuff with the magic questions and put it together with this impossibility effect, which is what I was calling it at the time. And my clients were starting to have these amazing results because I was teaching the same thing to them. And that became this book, which just released January 1st, How to Make the Impossible Easy. And the subtitle is The Astonishing Secret of the 10X Superpower.
Fantastic. Can you share with the audience then what your process is? We'll put the link. You'll still need to buy the book, but can you share with you how can entrepreneurs achieve the impossible goals whilst working less?
Absolutely. So the first thing is, we've all heard of Pareto's principle, right? 80% of what you do produces 20% of your results. 20% of what you do produces 80% of your results. I heard that for years. I said, oh, that's really great. That's a great cocktail party kind of conversation. But how do you know which is the 20% and which is the 80%? You know it after the fact, right? You can go back and say, okay, these activities produce these results. But how do you know it going forward? And I pondered that, and I realized that this impossibility thinking solves that problem. Because the minute you think of something that you really want, but you think it's impossible, and by the way we define impossible is I'm incapable of it. I sincerely believe I am incapable of doing this. We're not talking about the laws of the physical universe or anything, being in the same place at the same time, going faster than the speed of light, none of that stuff. We're talking about the laws inside a person's psychological makeup. And what you think you sincerely believe you are incapable of, that's impossible. If you decide to commit to it anyway, in other words, I want this so much, even though I know I can't do this, I'm going to commit to it. Your brain immediately starts trying to figure out how to give it to you. And what it does, just to make a long story short, and this is really the answer to your question, you start adding capabilities. So before, you were incapable of doing this impossible thing. What if you became more capable? Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. And then suddenly What was impossible seems maybe just a little bit possible. And then you add some more capabilities and it's, yeah, I can do this. And then you add some more capabilities and pretty soon, this is easy. What's my next impossible goal? So that's the
Mm.
process. And it's all about what we convince ourselves is impossible and then changing that, what I call embracing the impossible. There's a famous quote that people for many years attributed to Muhammad Ali. He didn't say it. It was actually in an advertising campaign that he was featured in. He could have said it because he was an amazing athlete. But the quote was, impossible is not a fact. It's an opinion.
Mm.
And if people understand that and realize that it's my opinion and I can change my opinion, essentially I'm teaching them how to change their opinion.
Ah, love that. And because people they don't set big enough goals. So,
Right.
what do you think is the reason for that? Why are people, this is the time of year when hopefully people have set some kind of goal for the new year. They've set their New Year's resolutions. Let's hope they get a little bit further than mid January, right? What do you think is actually holding people back from setting such big goals?
There are a number of things. And without diving too deeply into the psychobabble, the amateur psychology periodicals, people have an idea of who they are, their identity. And their beliefs about what they're able to accomplish are tied in deeply to their identity. And you can spend a lot of time doing change work on your identity. Who am I? What am I? That kind of thing. And that's a profoundly important and proper thing to do for people who want to do that. I'm essentially doing an end run around all that. I'm saying embrace the impossible. So your identity is telling you, I can't do this. And I'm saying, great, that's where you start. You can't do this. Now, commit to that. Now, that's the stretch here, right? It's not so much coming up with something that's impossible. We can all think of things that are impossible. I'd like to increase my income by a factor of 10 in 2 years. Totally impossible unless I commit to it. And now suddenly my brain says, oh, okay, he's serious about this. Let's figure out how to make this work. So once you do that, once you commit to it, and that's the sort of the leap of faith you're taking in yourself, right? You're saying, okay, this is impossible. I know I can't do it. This is beyond me, but I want it anyway. I'm committed to it. Once you make that commitment, you're doing an end run around this whole identity thing. You're essentially saying, it doesn't matter what I think of myself. It doesn't matter who I think I am. I'm committed to this. And then your brain goes, oh, he's committed to us. He's committed to this. Doesn't matter who he thinks he is. Doesn't matter what he is. He's committed to it. So your brain starts to make things happen. So that's the first piece of this. The second piece, the book is organized into 10 breakthroughs. And each breakthrough is totally transformational. You put them all together and you have this 10X superpower, this thing that can take you to a level that's just almost beyond your imagination. And the first breakthrough is thinking impossible, embracing the impossible. The second breakthrough is the minute you commit to something you think is impossible and your brain starts trying to figure stuff out, your brain goes, how do I do this? And that's probably the wrong question. It's what we've done our whole lives. That's probably the wrong question. A better question is, who can help me do this? Because if you think
Mm.
about it, if you have certain capabilities, you commit to something that's impossible and you can't do it. It's beyond your capabilities. It's not beyond everybody's capabilities. Somebody can do it. Somebody can help you get there. So if you added that person's capabilities to your own, suddenly you have way more capabilities than you had before. And you start embracing this idea of thinking about who can help you. I think I call this who thinking. And it's something I got from a guy named Dan Sullivan, who wrote a book about it, amazing entrepreneurial coach himself. And it's a great book too. He co-wrote it with Dr. Ben Hardy. This who thinking idea, suddenly you realize there's no limit to this, right? So if I can add the capabilities of one person, if I can figure out how to do that, what if I added the capabilities of 5 people or 10 people or 1,000 people? So these ideas that we have of what's impossible are usually because we're thinking I'm a one-man show or a one-woman show.
Hmm.
Call me. And I'm not that good. I'm not capable of that. And if you get rid of that stuff, if you do an end run around it and saying I'm committed to it anyway, and then you start thinking about who can help me get here, you realize this is just one step. Going from where I am to the impossible, I'm going to get that. I'm going to make that happen. It'll become easy. And then I'll go to the next step, the next impossible. And all I have to do is bring capabilities from other people and I can accomplish anything. It's really a remarkable frame of mind, a liberating frame of mind.
Yeah, love it. And to me, it sounds like you're combining a couple of things here. The people that I've spoken to, or things that I've read, and there's different opinions of setting goals. Some say that if you set too big a goal and you don't believe you can achieve it, then you're not going to, because it counteracts. Whereas others say, you know what, set that big goal. But what you shared, actually, what I picked up on was combining it with these questions because yeah, I get it. There's so much taught in the self-development arena about affirmations and making it a statement, but that's not gonna work if your subconscious is going, don't be so ridiculous, you can't do that.
Right.
Whereas what I've heard from you is slightly differently, is about rather than trying to make a statement, I'm going to achieve this impossible goal, and your subconscious works against you. It sounds to me from what I'm hearing from you is you're flipping it, and then you're almost asking yourself the question, which means your subconscious will go out and find the answer. So actually softening it a little bit and maybe even almost being playful. Yeah, but wouldn't it be great if? Because then the statement isn't there and the brain starts going, well, yeah, actually, it would be good if you could do that. Now let's reach from the answer. So what I'm getting from you is the combination of asking the right questions. Do you have any other questions that would be great for this to ask yourself when you're coming up with these big goals?
So you just wrote my second book, the magic book about magic questions. You just absolutely nailed it. One of the key differentiator from magic questions and other questions is they're questions you ask yourself. We ask a lot of questions of other people. These are questions you ask yourself. And that book, you talk about other questions. That book has 400 questions in it. And it talks about each one and how you can apply it. But let me take that even a step beyond, because something else happened in this whole impossibility thing that happened to me about a year ago, where my own mind was blown. And it's what was going on with artificial intelligence. Everything you read today, you cannot pick up a newspaper or read an article online that doesn't talk about AI in some way. And it's all about how it's going to change our world. Some people think it's great. Some people are afraid of it. Some people both. But what it all comes down to is how you engineer a prompt. It's called prompt engineering. How you
Hmm.
engineer a prompt for the artificial intelligence activity that you're trying to query. So it might be Google, it might be Perplexity, it might be ChatGPT, or any of a dozen others, dozens and dozens of others. It's how you engineer the prompt that gives you the results you want. And if you engineer the right prompt, and prompt engineering has become a whole new career path, or do the right prompt, you can have incredible results from these engines. And when I started learning about this, which I've been doing for the last several years because I'm a geek at heart, I came out of the technology business, and AI just blew my mind. It just really fascinated me. So I was trying to figure out how can I use this in my business? How can I use this to help my clients? How can I use this to help me? And I suddenly realized this is what you've been doing your whole life. You've been, except you're not doing it for artificial intelligence. You're doing prompt engineering for human intelligence. So all of my books are really about how to engineer the appropriate prompt for your own brain. It's exactly what you just described. The process is exactly what you described. You have this thing that you want to do. In my case, you're committed to an impossible goal, and your subconscious is saying you can't do this, you can't do this, can't do this, and you come back and you say, "Okay, I hear you, but what if I could?" Now
Mm.
suddenly that's a question, and your subconscious will cooperate because it knows how to play the game. It is, oh, if anything were possible, which is, by the way, the name of my newsletter. I have a newsletter that sources stories of people who've done amazing things against amazing odds. And I titled it, If Anything Were Possible, because that's like my favorite 4 words in the English language, because you can put it on in front of any question. Okay, how much money would you like to make next year? Oh, I'd love to have a 20% increase. Okay, if anything were possible, how much would you want? Oh, are you kidding me? I want millions. It unleashes what's really in there. It breaks through that glass ceiling that we all have in our brains. And it's exactly the question that you came up with a minute ago.
Brilliant. So we've got to ask ourselves questions. So that's actually great news, because I'm sure I talk to myself quite a bit, and you've just given me the cue that it's okay. It's okay to talk to yourself.
Yes.
In fact, it's really good to talk to yourself, and it's even more important to actually ask yourself some very specific questions. So
You want an even better cue? If
yeah,
you're really going to do this right, you're going to ask it out loud so your brain hears it as a question, and you're going to do it standing up or moving around so that your body feels it as a question. I know that sounds like this crazy out there stuff, but the scientific research linking the physiology and the brain and trying to get them to work together is profound. There's so much research that says, yes, this is what you do. And if you take one of these simple questions, because they're really simple questions, and you ask it of yourself and you put yourself, you're always in the question. It's always about I.
mhm,
It's not, let's see, Karen, how would you, no, that's not the right question. It's
mm,
how would I do this? You put yourself in the question, you stand up, you ask it out loud, and your brain goes, oh, let's give her everything we got. And it starts
brilliant.
going. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, because it's always about the feeling of everything. And so I think if people they're lying down, or they're doing these affirmations and all things like that, you're not really fully engaged. So that
Right.
makes a lot of sense to speak it out loud, because it makes it more definitive, and you're up, and it's combining the physical, the mental, and the spiritual, all things together.
Yep.
That's what we are as human beings.
Yep.
Keith, brilliant, love it. Different to other goal setting things that are out there, and this really is the perfect time. So guys, listeners, if you haven't set your goals, first of all, maybe it'd be worth coming and getting that book. What should the listeners do next, Keith?
Yeah. You mean to find the book? They're the simplest way to say this is just go to my website, keithellis.com. What they'll have there is 2 things. They'll have an opportunity to request the book, a free copy of the book. And no, I'm sorry, not the whole book, an excerpt of the book. I'm getting ahead of myself. I've taken the first 3 breakthroughs. There are 10 breakthroughs in this book. I've taken the first 3, which are the ones that explain this whole idea of the impossibility effect. I've taken those, and I'm making that available as a download, a free download. And that in itself can be transformational. So that's free. You can go to my website and get that. You could also, if you are a successful entrepreneur who wants to go to the next level, can take a little or fill out a little form to see if you qualify to have a free coaching session with me. It's a half an hour coaching session to find out if you want to join what I call my Superpower coaching program. It's a brand new program. It's really cool. Won't waste a lot of time talking about it right now, but it's for people who would read this excerpt and say, this is exactly what I'm looking for. How do I do a deep dive in this? And how do I get somebody who can hold me accountable? How do I work with somebody who can actually coach me through this stuff when I have questions? That's what the coaching program's about. And it's all at keithellis.com.
Fantastic. And all his details will be in the show notes. So if you can't remember that, then you can go back to the show notes and take a look at that. So what's next for Keith then? What's coming up in 2025?
I'm just launching this new Superpower coaching program. I've done one-on-one coaching for years and training and all kinds of stuff. This is the first time I put it together in an actual program where I say, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take somebody from setting an impossible goal to achieving that goal and adding the capabilities necessary to do that. I can't do any of that. I'm not doing the heavy lifting. The client is doing the heavy lifting, but I can provide the guidance to do that. And so I've got this whole program to do it. So I'm super buzzed about that because I am literally just launching that. I've been developing this for quite a while, but it was based on when the book came out. The book came out at the beginning of January.
Right.
It's about taking that and making it alive in your life.
Implementation. Sometimes reading a book will do enough for some, but for the majority of people to actually make it happen, you need that accountability. You need someone to guide you through the steps. Yep. So our last question, Keith, look, I know you guest on a lot of podcasts, and podcasting is a great way to grow your business. So if you had your own podcast, I know you don't, but if you had one, what do you think you would call it?
A great question. I've already stolen my favorite title for my newsletter, If Anything Were Possible. And the other favorite title would be How to Make the Impossible Easy. I love both of those ideas.
Yeah. I think that's great. And that links in with your book. And I think it's very clear. And we all want those big goals, but we also want it to be as easy as possible.
Right. That's exactly what we want, because we talk about impossible. If you think something's impossible and you think I've got to work 10 times harder than I'm working now, nobody can do that. Nobody has time for that. So you won't even start. But if you think this is about making the impossible easy, then it's yes, give me some.
Yeah. And for your brain, for your subconscious to go, okay. So great stuff. And guys, if you're listening, if you are a coach, expert, and you want to find out more about podcasting as a way to grow your business here at Podcast Profits Limited, this is what we do. We want to help you launch, grow your podcast. You can actually have fun. Who knew you could actually have fun building your business? You get to create content and build relationships. Then get in touch. Go to podcastprofitsunleashed.com/appointment. Just book a free strategy call with myself. And Keith, it's been wonderful speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been awesome. And to the listeners, I will be back next week. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to today's episode on the Podcast Profits Unleashed podcast. If you're a coach, consultant, therapist, or healer who would like to drive sales whilst having fun podcasting, head over to podcastprofitsunleashed.com/free and find out how you can turn your podcast into a sales machine. We'll see you on the next episode.